Transylvanian Sunrise. By Radu Sinamar with Peter Moon. Indeed, on the right side of the gallery you could see milestones that told the distance in meters and yards from the entrance in the tunnel. I also noticed that the material was rough to the touch and it could not be scratched or bent. Cesar told me that the material opposed any attempt of breaking, breaching, scratching or cutting, no matter how sharp was the object used. More than that, and strangely, the flames of fire or torch were absorbed into the material. Fire could not burn on it for practical sake. The American researchers can't say anything about this material because they have no sample of it. The only thing they could tell us was that the material is a strange combination between an organic and inorganic substance, but the way it is organized in its inner structure is still a deep mystery for them. At the milestone that indicated 280 meters, the gallery suddenly turned right in a sharp angle. The reason for this trajectory could not be deciphered. Much further ahead, I could see a blue light shining like a star. Seeing my emotion, Cesar smiled and spoke to me. There is the end of our journey. But in a certain way, it is also a beginning for something even greater according to the data I have until now. The technological means through which we were shown this data is colossal, but unfortunately, you can't have access to it. You will understand better when we will get to the projection hall, as we decided to name it. This means that the Americans got there, too. I said. As soon as I managed to solve the problem with the first energetic barrier, Signore Massini wanted to enter the corridor and get to the big hall. I invoked the increased risk issues that also determined the death of the 3 soldiers as well as the necessity of a severe system of security and alarms that had to be mounted at the entrance of the main corridor. He didn't like it, but he didn't have much of a choice. I was trying to gain as much time as possible, but especially so that I could manage to get to the big hall without being accompanied by any mason. I didn't know what they wanted from there, but I hoped to realize it as soon as I entered the hall and examined its contents. The satellite data showed the existence of a huge space at the end of the gallery, but this was also protected by an energetic barrier. During an organizing break, taking advantage of the absence of the Americans and of Signore Massini from the tunnel, I took an electric vehicle and I went alone through this corridor, a corridor deserted for more than 50,000 years, to the light you see further down in front of you. What you see shining is just the reflection of a part of the huge energetic protective shield of the immense hall. As you will notice, at the end, the gallery takes another sharp turn. I was secretly hoping that I could pass this barrier as I did with the first one, but when I got there, I was overwhelmed. The gallery we were crossing now suddenly opened into a huge hall right in the heart of the mountain, which included an immense semi-spherical energetic shield. This shield enclosed the projection hall and everything it contained. The structure's grandeur is incomparable, but exactly when I was getting ready to find the most suitable way to get inside, I was urgently called to the base. The news I was about to get would complicate everything. This was a crucial moment that I had not foreseen. Great diplomatic tensions. I got back to the base as fast as I could and entered the Americans' room, where I was also received by General Obadia. Cesar continued to tell me. An unpredicted element occurred that ruined all plans, ours as well as Signore Massini's. The Venerable One was seated on a chair at the back of the room, deep in his thoughts. He was probably making new plans and reconsidering his position. The Romanian press leaked something? I guessed. It was something even worse than that. Do you remember that the Venerable One told me about the discovery they had made next to Baghdad? That there as well was an energetic barrier that couldn't be breached but was identical with the semi-spherical shield that surrounded the big hall from here? I nodded. The Americans' discovery was not accidental but followed certain indications from the same military espionage satellite that also revealed the data for the approximate map of the structure inside the Busigi Mountains. Cesar continued. Well, the American counselor on national security issues got an ultra-secret fax in which he was informed that the energetic shield from Baghdad suddenly activated and started pulsing at a great frequency. The amazing information was that a hologram appeared in front of it, gradually showing Europe, then the southeast of Europe, then Romania's territory, then the Bucegi Mountains, and finally, the location of the inner structure within the Great Gallery's corridor and the semi-spherical energetic shield that was strongly pulsing. It was obvious that the two energetic semi-spherical shields were directly but mysteriously connected and that the activation of one of them led to the activation of the other one. Who knows, maybe there is a network of these kinds of underground structures all over the world. The bad news was that the U.S. presidency was informed of these events and made diplomatic contact with Romania through the secret services. In just a few minutes, the whole operation had been uncovered. The imminent arrival of a state commission from Bucharest had been announced to come and evaluate the situation. I was so absorbed in listening to what Cesar was telling me that I had not even realized that I had stopped walking. We had about another 100 meters before the last turn, and the light from the energetic shield, reflecting on the Great Gallery's wall, was now much stronger. Did they want to take over at a political level? I impatiently asked. I think this was the initial order, but things got even more complicated when they actually saw what this all was about. My fears came true because our politicians, the ones that had the right to be made aware of these aspects, panicked. It was obvious they couldn't face the events and that the decisions were going to be made under an advanced state of stress. General Obadia was called to Bucharest. It was a critical moment which put at stake even the existence of Department Zero, or at least of its independent structure. The general had to justify the eluding of the political power. Before leaving for the capital, accompanied by those from the commission, General Obadia talked with me and we both decided to reveal all the aspects, intrigues and plans of the last year, including my relation with Signore Massini. The most difficult problem was to find exactly the right people to make that crucial important report to, because, otherwise, all our intentions and plans would have been revealed and the repercussions could be fatal as far as the well-being of myself and the general was concerned. The same could be said for national security. Meanwhile, I was stuck at the base, all work having come to a halt. The American team had been isolated in a tent and the tunnel's guarding was taken over by the Army's Special Intervention Troops. The diplomatic tension was rising because Washington pressured to have contact with the Pentagon's generals and with the presidential counselor. Back then, no one knew what was in the big hall that was protected by the energetic shield. Any initiative or research operation had been stopped. No one was allowed into the base except for the guard patrols. The new situation was coordinated by two top generals from the Romanian army who permanently maintained contact with the highest political structure of Romania. In this entire extremely tense situation, the only one who managed to sneak outside the base, following a very special order coming from Bucharest, was Signore Massini. I haven't seen him since then, but believe me, I fully felt his influence in the way things unfolded afterwards. And I am referring here to the mute but very fierce fight between the Romanian and American diplomats as well as to the nature of the political decisions that were taken in connection with the operation from here. Everything happened very fast, just 8 days passed since those events. Listening to Cesar, I was puzzled by the way things turned, but especially because I was still there, as if nothing I was hearing about had really happened. If I am here and you, as far as I understand, managed to get inside the projection hall, this means that General Obadia was successful in Bucharest. Cesar mysteriously smiled. Mostly, the answer is affirmative. The success was mainly bringing everything to the right people's ears, people with a great moral integrity who are also animated by a profound patriotism. The NDSC, National Defense Supreme Council, asked for an emergency meeting. Most were shaken by what they found out. An intense wave of approval towards the general and his activities was then spontaneously created. They immediately decided to continue the research under the exclusive command of the general and me. However, the diplomatic crisis had not been resolved yet. The American military were allowed to leave the country the following day, but the team of researchers and specialists, as well as all logistics and devices, were kept here. We then thought that things were settled, and I was almost glad they had happened the way they did. That way I did not need to pretend or give in, more or less, to the venerable member of the Masonic elite. Unfortunately, their force of influence and the pressure they exercised through diplomatic channels was huge. We had reached the end of the hall where it turned left suddenly, this time for 4 meters only. The sight in front of our eyes was truly grandiose. The gigantic arch the energy shield formed was a splendid radiant blue, continuously crossed by intense bright white flashes. Although Cesar had mentioned that the projection room was isolated from the exterior by a gate, like the big gallery, one still could not see anything inside through it. The hall ended suddenly in a huge room, dug into the mountain like a hemisphere. There was no more than 7 or 8 meters from the end of the hall to the energy shield. In that space, 4 electrical vehicles were lined up. The arch created by the energy shield was included in the hemispherical cavity, but I noticed the area behind was common to the rock wall. I estimated the level distance between the shield's arch and the room's ceiling was about 10 meters. The magical light produced by the energy shield was being reflected in wonderful sparks and shades on the rocky walls of the mountain. The beauty and the grandeur of that picture seemed extraneous and my heart startled with emotion and joy. How did you manage to get inside? I asked Cesar, affected by the intensity of the feeling that the image gave me. It is much simpler than you would expect. The ones who planned the whole assembly probably considered the first energy shield to be a real touchstone for the possible entrance, estimating it was enough for the whole structure's security. I have to admit they were right. Nothing could pass the first energy shield unless it was a superior and profoundly beneficial consciousness. Even in case of an atomic combustion, the assembly was very well protected by the mountain. Maybe that was the reason the big gallery started suddenly, deep inside the mountain. I cannot say though how they technically created it. When I received the new orders from Bucharest, I was very happy. I sensed the fight was just starting, but at least I had important political support and from the leading politicians, too. The same day I entered the projection room you see in front of your eyes. I was alone as I found out the terrible mystery that had remained hidden for 50,000 years. You can hardly imagine the feelings I had in those moments. There are some aspects I cannot tell you though. You mentioned this number of years before, I interrupted Cesar. How can you tell that this is the right period of time since all of this has been here? It was the result of further scientific examination of some data, they offered that you will also see after we enter the room. All of the events I described to you have occurred since last week. Many of them happened very quickly and the changes of situations were dramatic sometimes. I shall tell you everything here before we enter the room as you will be thrilled at what you see. We stopped at the line of demarcation between the big gallery and the gigantic hall inside the mountain that held the hemispherical energy shield. Fascinated, I was listening to Cesar while I was watching the exotic sparkles on the blue surface of the hemisphere. After the decision to continue the research under Department Zero's management, I entered the projection room several times and catalogued everything, working together with our team of specialists. The next day, however, the first contradictory signals appeared from the political powers. The orders that followed one after the other, revoking each other, were either strong or evasive and showed the existence of a big tension. I suspected that there was the drama of a real battle. I had already sent over a secure phone line the results of our discovery in the projection room. Apparently, that was the spark that lit the bomb. General Obadia told me 2 days ago, after he came back from Bucharest, that the members of the Supreme Council for Protecting the Country were in a continuous meeting and keeping in touch with us. After talking out the issue beforehand, they decided to make this tremendous discovery from Romania's mountains known all over the world. General Obadia was part of the Supreme Council for Protecting the Country's structure and his word counted a lot in favor of the declaration that Romania was to make to the whole world. He told me there were some members of the Supreme Council for Protecting the Country that were strongly against it, but they were in the minority. The emotions got so high that, at one point, those people stood up and left the room. The president's advisors were continually coming and going, transferring information from the External Diplomatic Relations Office to the Supreme Council for Protecting the Country meeting. When the American diplomats were informed that Romania would make an international announcement of crucial importance for the whole world, everything turned to chaos. The general told me that he had never seen such a rush and panic among diplomats. Nobody knew the cause, but everybody suspected something very serious and important was happening. At one point, the Romanian president was called to have a direct phone conversation with the White House. That was a very special and top-secret discussion. He did not come back for a long time after that, but he informed everyone that a top American diplomatic delegation was already on its way to Bucharest. The information spread very fast. All the transactions and deals between the Romanian state and international financial organizations were blocked in a couple of hours. The declaration of a state of emergency in the mountain area was expected any moment. The Ministry of Defense gave an order of general alert for the officers. There were moments of great panic and even terror among those involved in this operation, as no one knew the real cause creating the current tension. The discussions between the American officials and the Romanian officials took place without an interpreter. They were so violent that there were many moments of crisis when the diplomats yelled at each other as loudly as they could, uttering multiple threats with measures of retaliation. The good part was that the other states of the world had not found out about that problem yet. The Americans knew very well there were other powerful countries that would take Romania's side in sustaining its declaration. What did they want to declare? I asked curiously. Mainly, it would have contained the most important data of the discovery made in the Bucegi Mountains, giving evidence to the whole world such as pictures and other essentials elements in order to clarify different aspects connected to this structure from inside the mountain. The greatest scientists would have been invited to study and search, and all the resources would have been mobilized to solve the numerous enigmas we were confronted with. But the most important aspect would have been the discoveries regarding the extreme ancient past of humankind and the real history that was almost entirely fabricated. Furthermore, there were other very delicate elements that I can only reveal to you partially. But, where did they know all that from? I asked. You will see immediately. Have a little bit more patience. The Americans reacted violently, as the declaration would have shattered their planetary influence in a second. Even more, it could have thrown into chaos the economy of their country, maybe even the economy of the whole world. Actually, that was the main reason they invoked strong-arm tactics. They wanted to avoid the panic and disturbance of all the people on Earth. However, they did not suspect that the possible social anguish and disturbed condition might have appeared as a direct result of the lies and manipulations the ruling classes, especially the Masonic organizations, have been maintaining all this time. Through a very special diplomatic channel, a personal papal approach was received, advising towards great temperance before making this fundamental step for humankind. The Vatican had already been informed by the Americans, as it was considered by the latter a possible ally in blocking the revelations. Strangely, although revealing these aspects to the whole world would have reduced considerably the Vatican's power and its influence upon Christian believers, the Pope did not take a firm position against it, but he urged instead for an efficient balancing of pros and cons before presenting the declaration. He even communicated he would put at the Romanian state's disposal certain ancient documents from the secret archives of the papal administration that are very important for Romania and support the proofs of the discovery in the mountains. Finally, after 2 hours of discussion and consultation, a final collaboration agreement was reached, with precise terms that balanced the interests of both countries. I cannot tell you these terms, but I know the Romanian state's position was that of postponing the revelations or of presenting them to the whole world gradually in the future. The next day, after things had calmed down a little bit and according to the collaboration agreement between the two countries, an American commando team arrived promptly with all the necessary logistics that you already saw inside the base. The two generals and the National Security Problems Advisor came back with them, probably having very clear tasks. According to the understood protocol, the strictest security, protection and surveillance measures were taken that were developed in the following days. That is why you will not have access in some areas in the projection room, but I will tell you shortly what has been found there.